Morning, everyone. Welcome. I'd like to welcome our online visitors this morning as well. I'd like to call the Bruce County Council March 1st already meeting to order. And the first item on the agenda, of course, is the roll call, Darlene, or Donna.
Councillor Buckle. Present. Councillor Eady.
Present.
Warden Eagleson.
Present.
Councillor Ingalls. Councillor Jackson. Councillor McKeever. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tulin.
Next item on the agenda, of course, is I need to remind everyone it's our own responsibility to close any pecuniary interest that you may have on today's agenda. You can do so if and when the matter arises. And items 3 is the confirmation of council meetings of February 1st, 2018.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Eady and seconded by Councillor Ingalls that the minutes of the February 1st, 2018 council session be adopted as circulated.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Anne?
I just think there's one point where I left the meeting and I left at 2 instead of 1 something. I just remembered reading it last night. Whenever I left on February 1st, because my meeting was at 3 back in Kincardine and I left after 2.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I believe that was committee, not council.
Not council? Okay. Okay. So later, when it's committee, that's what it was.
Any other discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of adopting the minutes? That's carried. Thank you. So we're on to communications. Nothing further on communications at this time. A lot of paper here to fumble with. Yeah, that's good. Delegations. We have some delegations this morning. So let's move on with that. And, the first delegation is a farm assessment and taxes. We have Ben here somewhere. Good morning, Ben. And do you have Ken with you as well? We'll invite you gentlemen to the podium. I think there's a button to push to get the mic on, and we look forward to your presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you, Warden, and the members of County Council for allowing us to make this presentation this morning. My name's Ken Bridge. I'm a proud 5th-generation Bruce County resident, born and raised in Kincardine Township, and still enjoying farming in that municipality. I practiced mixed animal veterinary medicine in the Ripley, Port Elgin, Paisley, and Lucknow areas for 35 years, and now I'm retired. I come to you this morning as president of the Bruce County Federation of Agriculture with Mr. Ben Lafort, a spokesperson for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, to discuss and present the projected increases in the farm tax ratio anticipated in the next few years. Mr. Lafort has done extensive research into the situation on behalf of Ontario farmers and has already made similar presentations to other county councils. I present Mr. Lafort.
Good morning. Yes, here this morning to talk about this. So I might as well jump right into it. Fair amount of topics to cover. So, as probably well aware, 16 MPAC sent out its new property assessment notifications, which basically gave the new assessment throughout the province. What we saw was for tax purposes increased. We knew that there was going to be a significant issue coming down the pipe over the next 4 years as those increased assessments are phased in the 2017 to 2020 tax years. So we had a very good idea at that point that there was going to be a pretty significant issue, but really determining the weight or the significance of that issue in each county is not only how farmland is increasing in value, but how is farmland increasing in value relative to the other property classes in that county. So taking Bruce County, for example, the average farmland value is increased by 82%. And so we know that's even above the very high provincial average. We knew that would likely be an issue, but what really kind of throws gasoline on the fire, so to speak, is the fact that residential values in the county from MPAC's assessment increased by only 2%. That's really what drives the shift of tax burden, which I'll say that word a lot, and I'm just going to define that as the percentage of the total taxes that the county collects coming from farmland. So what's really determining, the increase in burden, it's not necessarily the fact that farmland has increased by 82%, but by the fact that it's increased by 82% compared to only 2% for residential. If residential, industrial, and farm all increased by 82%, there wouldn't really be a significant tax burden shift here. At least not driven by the assessments. Would depend what you do with your tax policy, I suppose. But the MPAC assessments would not be driving any significant increase in tax burden. That's when one property class, this case farmland, is increasing at a much more significant rate than the other property classes, and particularly residential, because it's the biggest property class, so it carries the most weight. So what exactly does that look like, given the about 40 times increase, or the pace of increase from farmland compared to residential? So in the kind of chart below here, 2016 was the last year of the previous assessment cycle. So in the last year of the previous assessment cycle, the county collected about 4.4% of its total taxes from the farm property class. And now we'll see in 2017, 18, 19, and 20, that is increasing to 5.2%, to 6%, to 6.8%, 7.5%, and that's completely driven by that disproportional increase in the assessments. So there's kind of two sides to the kind of tax burden shifting coin. One of them is this piece, the assessments, how do they shake out relative to each other, and then the tax ratio policy, which can help offset this disproportional increase that we're seeing playing in this 4-year tax period. Here's the farm tax burden in Bruce County from 2001 and then projected out to around 2020. So really what we're seeing is over the first 16 years of this graph from 2001 to about 2016 is actually not changing that much. It's relatively flat. You're in 2016, it was 4.4% of the total taxes. In 2001, it was 4.45% of the total taxes. Not a huge variation. There was a period where it was slightly down, and then in 2012 it started going up. Now we see at the last 4 years of that graph, which is where we currently are, we're in the middle of this. It looks more like a ski hill, where the other portion of the graph looks more like some nice flat farmland. So really, again, what this is saying is this tax, if you think of the total taxes collected by the county as a tax pie, the farmer's slice of that pie has been relatively stable, even though the taxes, or the pie itself, has increased each year. The county needs to increase its budget previous to the next year to run, the county, inflationary costs and whatnot. But what we're seeing now is so not only is the tax pie increasing, which is fine, but the farmer's slice of that pie is also increasing, and that's where we are in this 4-year period, and that's what brings us here today. I do want to address a few points that have become kind of common, frequently asked questions at other counties. First of which is that our request here today would not impact the amount of dollars that the county has to run its budget. You could actually, a lot of counties actually pass their budget first, saying we want to spend X amount of dollars, and then pass their tax ratio policy later to say, and here's how we're going to collect that fund. So what we are asking is to slow the increase in taxes on farmland, not decrease it, just slow the increase for 2018. Again, won't impact the amount of dollars the county has. It just is helping to smooth out that tax burden that's being driven by the assessments. Again, the tax ratio policy being the other side of the coin for that tax burden, with the assessments being the first half that's driving the issue. And do just also quickly want to reiterate, because it comes up a lot, is OFA and our county federations working with our municipal partners to address really important issues, infrastructure funding and Funding for rural municipalities, absolutely, it's become a much bigger priority for us over the last few years. And in actually last week, the chair of the Western Ward and chair of the Eastern Wardens, and as well as the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, joined our President Heath at Queen's Park to announce our partnership to work on that very issue, on funding for rural roads and bridges, funding for natural gas expansion, funding for broadband access in rural areas, and funding for rural municipalities. So I want to just quickly address that because that is often a question that comes up, so just to address it before we need to, and the fact that obviously that would help lift the kind of a rising tides lifts all ships kind of situation. But those are our long-term lobby issues that can hopefully help address some of this, the fiscal situations a lot of our rural municipalities are facing. But in the interim, we do have this issue of the tax burden shift that's being driven purely, again, by the assessments. So it's not any policy that any of these municipalities have taken that's caused this. We definitely don't want it to come off that way. This is, MPAC has delivered the assessments, and then unfortunately the ball is rolled into the court of county councils, because really the only issue, or the only tool left in the toolbox to prevent further shifting of tax burden over the next 3 years is the tax ratio tool. That's another issue that comes up quite frequently, is that, is there a provincial solution to this? The province has been very clear that they don't want to be overly prescriptive for municipalities and counties to run their tax policy. So they have said very clearly that they have given county governments the ability to adjust the tax ratio each year for farmland anywhere between 0% and 25% of the local residential rate. And in their eyes, that is, they've fulfilled their kind of duty on this issue and leave it to local tax policy to sort itself out, which is, again, what brings us here today. So our specific ask, this is more of an illustrative point here. Again, we said the MPAC assessments are phased in over a 4-year period. So that tax burden shift is increasing each year. So it's not a 1-year thing. To have maintained the 2016 tax burden last year would have required a farm ratio reducing from 0.25 to 0.21. So that's kind of already crossed out. We've accepted the fact that 2017 is over. Farmers are paying a higher proportion of the taxes than they did in 2016. That's okay. The ask here today is to maintain kind of that slice of the tax pie from 2017. So acknowledging the fact that, okay, we're going to be paying, significantly more taxes than we were in 2016, but can we stop the significant increase in that kind of super steep slope that we saw in the last 4 years there? We're now in the second year of that high sloped graph. And to maintain the 2017 portion of the tax pie would again require a tax ratio of 0.21. Now you can see there in 2019 and 2020, there's also kind of recommended ratios there, but I realize you can't vote on future tax ratios. They're there for illustrative purposes to drive home the point that this is a kind of year-by-year process, and then these assessments are going to continue to be phased in each year. But our specific request is on the 2018 tax ratio, and our ask would be that this council vote to reduce the tax ratio for farm property class from 0.25 to 0.21. And the final point, I suppose, I'll drive home once more before opening up to questions, is the fact that this would not reduce the amount of taxes farmers are paying in 2018. They would actually still pay more taxes than they did in 2017. It would just be a slowing of the increase in tax. Again, if you put it in at 0.21 and hold that for 3 years, or do whatever you want, from there, the assessments would continue, those high assessments continue to come in, and the taxes would continue to increase. So this is kind of a slowing of the 1 year of this significant tax increases, our specific ask, but I'll throw it open for any questions or comments or concerns anyone may have here, and I thank you again for the opportunity to bring this issue forward.
Any questions?
Go ahead, Ann.
Mayor Eady?
Just a comment, like it's, we've already set it for 2018. They're in, like, the budgets are done, but and then the next is, you know, to the next council. But the one thing I think for 2016, when MPAC did their assessment, I know in our area, and I don't know what you find, what the other mayors found, but in the municipality of Kincardine, the MCR and the refurbishment of the Bruce was just announced in December, and then the new impact assessment was January the 1st, 2016. And some of the housing assessments went down or stayed the same. There was a few went up. But I think next assessment, we're going to see a big increase in our residential rates when it is done. It'll be significant because already we seem to have a housing shortage along the lakeshore, so along the lakeshore area. So there won't be as big a gap. Now, of course, being from a farm background, I know that it is pretty significant, the increases that you are paying in your taxes, but it's all about the balance.
Okay. If the county has passed its budget and its tax ratio policies, or just the budget for the year, because many times counties pass their budget and then at a later date solidify their tax ratio policy, because again, will impact your budget in terms of how many dollars you're collecting.
Yes, through you, Mr. Warden, the tax bylaw, tax rate and ratio budget is, our bylaw is on our agenda this morning to be passed.
Great, thank you. So for that 0.21 ratio to be voted. And to the second point there about the next assessment cycle potentially swinging the other way, absolutely possible, which is why anyone from Bruce Federation would stand in the way that that situation does occur. You increasing the tax ratio back up to 0.25. This will provide you that kind of flexibility to move it back up in the future if things swing the other way.
Thank you.
Any other questions of the delegation? Hearing none, thank you very much for being able to come to Walkerton this morning. And
once again, I thank council for its consideration in this matter. We look forward to seeing as many of you as we can, or as possible, at our politicians meeting upcoming on March 10th, 9:30 at the Elmwood Community Center. And it's sponsored by Grey Bruce Federations of Agriculture. I think we're all aware that different municipalities have different sources of income. Some have a lot more rural than others. So the ratio may change a little bit there, but we definitely appreciate the time that you've given us this morning. Thank you.
thank you again. Moving on to our is the manufacturing construction sector partnership with the labor market strategy, and we're pleased to have this morning Gemma Menendez-Smith. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Warden and Council and staff. We're pleased to be able to bring this report. I should put that on. There, you can hear me a little bit better. So we have been involved with the Regional Economic Development Advisory Committee that is led by Bruce Powell and the County of Bruce. And part of what we do is work with the local training action team, which is looking at what the implications will be with all the growth. Growth is amazing. We just need to look at where we're going to meet those labor force needs. And so as part of that work with the local training action team, we had the opportunity as a group, which includes Bruce County, Huron County, and Grey County economic development staff. We had an opportunity to get some funding from the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Development to develop a labor market strategy for the two we felt most affected sectors in the region, and that's manufacturing and construction, with the introduction of the Life Extension Project. So I'm going to share some information that we collected with you today, and I need, okay. There we go. So the research and methodology, we used a lot of sources to be able to explore specific labor market needs were in the 3-county region. And so those sources included StatScan labor force survey information, job vacancies, wage survey, and national household survey information, as well as one of the local tools that we use, Talent Neuron, and we also spoke with stakeholders. We spoke with employers as well as service providers in our region to talk about what the labor market issues looked like and to make sure that we were looking at a rural lens of what we needed to talk about with those labor market trends to develop that labor market strategy. So the objective really is to see what was happening with the labor market in manufacturing and construction and what that would look like. Our market continues to shrink, and so as we look at the number of people involved in our labor market, and we have a growing economy and very vibrant in Bruce Grey Huron, we need to, as workforce planning and a community, to think about how we're going to meet those demands. And it's a good problem. We just need to come up with really good solutions that will work in our area. So the rapidly shrinking labor force, declined in the region, and the region includes Bruce, Grey, Huron, and Perth counties, declined by about 18,700 people since 2004. Now the job is declining, that's for sure. So when we look at that churn in the labor market, we really need to think about what solutions that we can really look at growing that labor market. But one of the things we need to look at as well is the retention in the labor market. If we have a population that's stagnant and certainly a labor market that's very migrant, we really need to think about that retention. Once we attract people into Bruce County, how are we going to keep them here for the long term? And building those strong ties with the community will make a big difference as we move forward. So as we look at the labor market churn, we have permanent layoff rates within construction for youth aged 15 to 24 is almost 3 times higher than that of the workers aged 25 to 54. So when we look at those things that are happening in the labor market, we need to be engaging more young people within these 2 sectors of manufacturing and construction. Job vacancies and vacancy rates are highest for lower skilled occupations. However, analysis shows that a local shortage of skilled workers exists within welding, and I was just talking to a company in Huron County, and they're saying that they're growing, they're looking for workers, and the one place that they're also needing is welders. And that's across, it's not just the 4-county region or the 3-county region impact area for the Bruce Life Extension Project, but it's across the province. So we know that when we start to look at attracting welders in our area, let's just say, if that was going to be one of our focuses, we know that there are communities across the province that will be doing the same. So we need to think about what are those attraction strategies and what are the pulls to stay here, to come and stay here in Bruce County. So as we move forward into the issue of high layoff rates for youth, the strategy that was recommended in the labor force strategy was an implementation of a sector-focused soft skills program. And we just finished up our Employer One survey, and you will be seeing that result in early April. But what we're seeing is employers are continuing to feel the pinch around that labor force, the soft skills. And the soft skills really looking at, are people showing up for work? Are people staying in those jobs? And that is not just entry-level positions, that's across the board, any level of occupation. So what we're seeing is a general attitude shift in our workforce that employers are saying we just can't find the skilled workers. In fact, this year, for the first time, it's gone up to 77% of our employers feel that they have fair to poor availability of skilled workers. And that's not a good sign for us. In the last 3 years of doing the survey, we had 68%. So the dissatisfaction among our employers is really growing. And so we really need to, and this is something that is a fundamental shift in thinking for our workforce. So you can't sit in the classroom and have it change. We really need to implement and embed this behavior in everything that we do to make this shift for our employers. The second issue was lower skill gap. So we needed to identify the high skill demand occupations, but lower skilled and skilled. So we need to look at everything that's happening. And in our region, we do see more entry-level positions that need to be filled. And so as we're looking to attract or train a workforce, we need to be looking at every level of that spectrum of continuous learning and training to meet the needs of our employers. And of course, you know, I don't have to tell you, tourism is one of your top employment economies, and when you have entry-level positions and layoffs and all of those kinds of things that go with that tourism economy, then we need to look at how do we talk to our workforce locally about their engagement in the labor market and within those economies. To employment retention, which is the same as the within the same lower skilled and entry level type occupations. When we're talking about welders, sometimes employers are willing to train, but are people going to stick around long enough for the training? And that's what we need to get people involved in. How do we make sure that we have people entering those lower and entry level positions and then staying? One of the strategies that did come up as something that's needed is that affordable housing. It has nothing to do with labor market development. It has everything to do with whether people stay in your community. Do they have housing that they can afford on entry-level wages? And if we don't close that gap between the housing issue and the entry-level position issue, we are going to continue to see a gap in meeting our labor market needs for sure. It's going to continue to grow, actually. And just to highlight the partners that were involved in this project, Blue Water and Bruce Grey Catholic District School Boards, Bruce Community Futures, Bruce Power Pensioners Association. We've got a wide skills and knowledge that come to the table at the local training action team, the Canadian Unions of Skilled Workers, the County of Bruce, County of Grey, County of Huron, and the Municipality of Kincardine, and of course the 4-County Labour Market Planning Board. We chair the committee at this time. And what we wanted to do today is really bring the information to you as to there is a strategy out there for construction and manufacturing. Employers have been engaged. What we need to do now is continue to talk to employers about how they're going to become more actively engaged, not just talking about a strategy, but implementing and being involved in that strategy in a way that really makes sense for getting people involved. And I'll give you one example of how that is happening in Perth County. We're delivering the Skills Advance Ontario project, where we have developed training based on input from employers, and we take people we work with individuals who are on Ontario Works, and we give them that training, and employers then hire the direct graduates from that program for a 2-week placement, and so far we have a 95% full employment rate that's continuing. So that's the activity that employers can take within getting that skilled workforce. And we have some people, I have to say, from Bruce County that have been involved in that training in the Listowel area, and they're finding it very, very useful, and we're hoping that they'll gain the skills to remain employed full-time in manufacturing. So just one example of how we can meet the needs of employers, but how employers can also be actively engaged in making sure those needs are met. Thank you.
Very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. One thing I picked up on there that you mentioned near the end about the employers in Bruce County in the Listowel area. Well, Listowel would like to be part of Bruce County, but at this point in time, they're not.
No, they're not. You know, the workforce is migrant, so where they will go where there are jobs. And so far, the training is only funded for Perth County, but we have Bruce County residents that are actually benefiting from that training and will have skills to move forward in the labor force.
Mike, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Warden. Jim, we hear this often where there's a mismatch of skilled workers and what employers are looking for here. And to me, I looked at your list of partners, and we had a presentation at our council in Saugeen Shores this week from a community college that's offering training in some of these things. But to me, I think there's a disconnect there with community colleges. I'm sure you work with them, but I mean, I think they should be to me, I think there's more work to do, because with the school boards and the community colleges, I think that's where you need to provide that training for these skilled workers so that they can stay, first of all, get that training locally here if we can get it, and then stay and work with our employers.
Absolutely. One of the focuses of the local training action team is how do we make sure that training is offered locally. That's one of the issues as well. If people are working in entry-level positions, it's not always easy for them to go away for training. It costs a lot to be able to go away for training. So part of what this committee is going to be looking at, and hopefully being able to implement with the counties that are involved, is how do we identify, first of all, the training, identify the employers that will hire. That's our biggest gap. If we're training people in skills that employers don't need locally, we will continue to have unemployed, underemployed people. If we're able to make the direct connection with the employer and the workplace and be able to offer that locally, I think we can close that gap. But it means all working together, community colleges, local employment service providers, and the county, anything that we need to be doing together with our employers to meet those needs. But I'll tell you that you'll see more of that moving forward, where we're working together in identifying and then developing strategies that will meet the needs.
Gemma, what kind of feedback are you getting from small businesses with regards to the increase in the minimum wage? Because what I'm hearing out in the communities is the frustration on younger people possibly getting their hours cut back or not getting hired, you know, at some of these positions. So just what kind of feedback are you getting?
Well, I'll tell you, in our last employer survey, because it ran from January 1st to 31st, we didn't get a lot of feedback. We are anticipating in 2019, when we run that survey in January, we will hear a lot more around the impacts of the increase in minimum wage. What I think is happening now, and I did mention that although we're talking about manufacturing and construction here, tourism being a very strong economy in Bruce County, I will tell you that those small employers will be impacted significantly. We haven't heard directly from employers, but I can imagine that next year we'll hear a lot more about what's happening. We're hearing anecdotally, so I can't give you any evidence-based information.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I don't know how I got sitting on this committee, but I have been, but I've been most impressed with Gemma's role as chair and her leadership in this initiative, and it's providing us with good information. Like you say, some of it's anecdotal at first, but it's nice to have the evidence-based. So when you're going for grants or going forward, you have actual, more scientific information. So thank you, Gemma.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments of this, Bob?
There's no government programs out there for small businesses to be reimbursed financially to train young people to work for them?
Yes, there is. The Canada-Ontario Job Grant is, it covers, it depends on the size of the business and if you're a nonprofit and so on. There's definitely criteria around not but certainly how much the employer will have to pay. And a significant portion of the training, up to about $10,000, is covered by the Canada-Ontario Job Grant. And it covers every employer within, except I think if you are using the program. So VPI couldn't use the program. So is that training, and there are other incentives as well for employers to get involved, but the most significant one around training would be Canada-Ontario Job Grant. If anyone in Bruce County is interested, if you're interested in getting more information to your municipality, then you would contact VPI that's based here in Woketon to give you that information. But employers need to be using more of those funds. It's not being used up annually.
Gemma, can you, a rapidly shrinking labor force, like,
are you, what's your question?
I wish I knew.
No. People are moving away. When you look at our migration stats, although our population in Bruce County, the population was about plus 2.9, somewhere around there, from the census. But when you look at the labor market, the churn, so within every year we have data that tells us where people are moving from and to. And that is really significant when we look at those numbers of people moving in and out of the region. Every time someone moves out or people move out of our region and others move in, it changes the dynamics, it changes the needs for the services that we might have. And so as a county, that may be something that we continue to work with with you on looking at, on an annual basis, who's moving in, who's moving out, and hopefully be able to identify the types of skills that are coming in and out of our region.
Well, obviously, it's the moving out, I guess.
Yes, definitely. We need to work at that attraction piece. Sorry, not the attraction piece. The retention piece is one of our biggest struggles, and that's what we need to work on.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions of Gemma at this time? I think, thank you very much for a very interesting delegation and for some good questions and excellent answers.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. We have another delegation this morning from the Community Index of Wellbeing, and Tanya. Morning, Tanya. Thank you for coming to the County of Bruce. And so I think there's a button there to get the mic on. You're all set to go. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for having me today and letting me share a little bit about the CIW survey that we're going to be embarking on later this month. My name's Tanya Shute, and I'm out of the Community Health Center. We're located in Markdale and Dundalk, Chatsworth area. And I'll just draw your attention to the partners on the first screen here. These are some individuals who are working with us on the CIW. We have both counties, the Poverty Task Force, the Grey Bruce Health Unit, the LIN, and also the Community Foundation. And they're involved with this working group because of the work that they've been doing on vital signs. So just to give you a little bit of context around the CIW, there's a lot of focus right now across all sectors on health equity, knowing that despite universal health care services, there's continues to be persistent gaps among social groups, and they call that kind of the social determinants of health, so that it's not just the physiological or the genetic piece that makes people sick, it's also things like income, social status, social support networks, education, etc. So this is something that's particular of interest to our organization, and recently, end of 2016, we were the recipient of an Ontario Trillium Foundation GROW grant, and we committed to measuring well-being in the community. When we started to kind of do that in the Southeast Grey area, there was some quick interest identified throughout the County of Grey, and soon thereafterwards also the County of Bruce, and we figured if we're going to do it, we'll do it right. There was a lot of interest for a while now, and we felt that this would be information that individuals and other sectors would find helpful. So why we're interested in health equity and its effects on well-being. We know that a healthier population will lessen the pressure on resources dedicated to the healthcare treatment, so being preventative as opposed to reactive. We know that a more educated workforce will increase our innovative capacity, making us more productive and prosperous. A wealthier economy can afford more robust social programs, cultural activities that'll make people feel closer to their communities. And then basically having that sustainable environment can protect jobs, exports, offer more activities of leisure, and just have more quality family time. So these are kind of those goals that the CIW tries to connect the goals on that will influence well-being. The Canadian Index of Wellbeing, it's actually a national initiative supported by an independent, nonpartisan group of national and international leaders, researchers, organizations, and grassroots citizens who wanted to develop a new way of measuring well-being, and their office is located out of the University of Waterloo. And it kind of differs from other conventional well-being indices because it captures more of a broad range of indicators from diverse areas that reflect basically our everyday lives. And this is good because it also then translates well into policy. So the Canadian Index of Wellbeing, you'll see up there in the mid-2000s, the CIW conducted 3 very broad consultations with Canadians about those 8 domains and kind of what mattered to people the most. And then national and international experts identified 64 indicators, drawing from just under 200 unique data sources, primarily through Stats Canada. So you'll see up there that that's basically what the survey is based on, and how they're interconnected. So how the CIW survey works is that it's a random sampling, and it's confidential and anonymous. So because we're working through the University of Waterloo, there's a research ethics board, and everything's kind of done with a lot of rigor. 25% of the population will receive an invitation letter with a unique ID. They'll then be encouraged to go online and complete the survey, and if they request assistance in filling that out, or if they'd like a paper copy, they would be able to do that as well. There's also something built into this project about resampling if numbers are low. One of the neat things about this project is that you'll be able to kind of zone in on different communities or areas of your county. So if numbers are low so that it's statistically significant, they will do like a follow-up letters, and they can resample to make sure you have the information that you need. Residents will be encouraged to fill this out with a bit of an incentive of one of 10 $50 gift certificates at Foodland. So then the question is, we're going to do this survey, and what do we do with the information? So the challenge to policy shapers and decision makers is to then take this knowledge and use it to produce more comprehensive policies and improve the lives of our communities. So it will inform municipal planners and incorporate into official plans. It can create a baseline measure, so it's showing how this is a good place to live, learn, and work and grow. And there is an opportunity to then check in every 5 years if that's something that is of interest, but is also of value to community organizations. So places like the Community Health Centre, United Way, Employment Services, Vital Signs, and the Health Unit, we can then use that information to better understand and support the people that we serve. So here's just a brief sampling of some communities that have already used the CIW. So we have the Kingston area. They did theirs in 2013, and they were, out of their survey, they pulled a lot of information on the domain of time use. They were also interested in advance of the municipal elections to see about the level of civic engagement and how that was related to well-being. The City of Guelph did theirs in 2011, and the city staff commissioned a plan for well-being in Guelph. They wanted to look at ensuring all residents had access to services and support that they needed to lead healthy and active lives. Waterloo in 2013, they pulled out information of their data. They were interested in things like belonging and leadership, as well as arts and culture. And then on to the right was Victoria, and that was in 2014. On the left-hand side, there was Wood Buffalo, and that was a strong collection of both community agencies and regional government. And then the last one is just on the right-hand side. That's the most recent. That's in 2016 in Oxford, so a little bit closer to home. And this 2016 collaborative was between local organizations, again, and the county-level government. And they wanted to work to identify themes, and then the CIW then would provide a deeper understanding on that. And Oxford County and local social service agencies now can look at making more informed decisions that move their community to a greater level of well-being. So Bruce County and Grey County, this will be the largest CIW area to date. There is a rural focus, and there is an ability also to focus on groups, low income and marginalized populations. So the working group is trying to see how to also encourage different diverse voices in there as well. So our projected launch date, and as of this time, we seem to be on track, is Monday, March the 19th. We will be developing, we have quite a robust communications plan, and you guys are actually the first presentation. So this, I think we have about 10 different presentations. We also have some media releases that we're going to do, and we're vetting these all through council and communications department just to make sure that everybody's happy with how the brand looks, etc. So you'll get more information, and the hope is we'll have a bit of a kind of a fact sheet that we can then distribute to all the municipalities, CAOs, council, and mayors, so that they also have a bit of a high-level understanding of kind of why their residents are going to be receiving a survey. The survey will be open for 8 weeks, and I guess the biggest piece is we just want to promote it. At the end of the day, the more information we have, the better it's going to be for everyone. The County of Bruce will have the ability to work with University of Waterloo one-on-one to extrapolate or make any reports that they feel that they'd like to make. And this can be an ongoing process. So the more information that's there, the better. So that's all I've got here. And we'll be directing all kind of fielding any kind of questions probably through myself. And right now, the hope is that the website's actually going to be the chc.c/CIW, but as of the time of this presentation, we didn't have that pathway set up yet. So that's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions of Tanya at this time? Anne?
I was just interested when you say you're going to focus groups for low-income and marginalized populations. So sometimes they're hard to engage, and it's so your survey is on the website totally, I take it.
You'll get an invitation letter with a pin to go online, but there's also the option on the letter to say, give me a call if you need assistance, like whether it be language assistance or just readability to assist, we can do that, or send out a paper copy.
So, so I'm just thinking of marginalized populations, low-income groups. How would community living groups participate? Just through their staff, or do you contact them at all?
That's a great question. So a lot of the way that this survey is built on is leveraging kind of StatsCan census information. So if indeed people were registered and that information was there, the same format in terms of how they would collect that information, whether it be through staff assistance, family assistance, power of attorney, we would do that. We're being very careful with making sure we know the enumeration for homelessness is coming up. We don't want to conflict with anything or give people survey fatigue. We're also very appreciative of the work Vital Signs did on the 2 reserves and the fact that what went well and what didn't go well, and we know that there's some great work happening right now at the health unit around the upcoming Healthy Communities Partnership Conference around health equity, especially with an Indigenous focus, and there's going to be a lot of good messages and themes and learnings that come out of that, and we're hoping that perhaps we could use some of that information and incorporate it into the report. And then in terms of kind of the other piece, we're working with the group. We have until likely about the end of May to see how we can make sure we have all those voices heard. So really that's on our list to make sure that we do get that voice.
Yes, so I'm just thinking over here too. We have a wealth of information in Christine McDonald.
Christine's my main point of contact for Bruce County.
Yes, so that's good.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Tanya this morning? David?
I'm really pleased to see the health unit involved.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of things, as you say, that are going on there that we shouldn't be repeating.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's certainly a good contact, and keep working with them, because there's no sense in doing things over again.
Absolutely, and our main contact there is the senior epidemiologist. So there's been a lot of excitement about this survey for a while. It just hasn't all kind of come together. So she's a real leader in terms of the data piece for this, for sure.
Kelly, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Warden, great presentation, Tanya. I do have one question on a couple of the last slides where Bruce County and Grey County are being commingled, and it was my understanding that there were going to be 2 separate surveys done. So maybe I've just gotten confused.
I tried not to make it look commingled, so I did put Bruce County and Grey County. So what we're really striving to do is make sure the brand integrity is there for both counties, that individuals know that they recognize their county and they're not seeing this as Grey Bruce or Bruce Grey. So that's kind of the vetting through the communications piece. Also, the survey is one survey. The survey doesn't really change whether you're going to receive it, say, in Kincardine, or whether you'll receive it in Meaford. It's going to be the same survey, and but there is the ability then to make sure that this is that the two counties are equally represented in terms of the survey. So it is the survey launch date stays the same, the collection date stays the same, the survey itself is the same, but in terms of making sure that you know, those pieces, we can have separate reports, et cetera. And one thing that we worked on with our working committee as well is to make sure that before any kind of information gets released or how it gets released, it's always, it's looked over by our partners to make sure it does, you know, stay true to kind of what the conversations we had ahead of time.
Mrs. McDonald.
Thank you. I would just add to that too, for everyone's awareness, that the sampling is done by postal codes. So that will allow unique information to be generated by postal codes, and then any other special surveys that are distributed through focused areas have unique identifiers. So again, that all keeps the methodology really robust, but will allow us to work with the University of Waterloo CIW group to get any data that we need in the future based on those segregated pieces. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Anyone else have any questions or comments they want to share at this time? If not, once again, thank you, Tanya, for your presentation this morning, and best wishes with your project. Moving on then, reports of staff. Any reports of staff at this time? Hearing none, inquiries and announcements.
Through you, Mr. Warden, I thought that there may be value in giving an update on the bridge situation in the community of Chesley and follow up to the flooding that occurred, if you wish. Yes. Yeah. The team have, through Brian Knox's area and portfolio, have done a preliminary assessment, and there will be a public meeting. It's been scheduled for next Thursday, March 8th. I should be able to add 7 to today. And there will be a series of updates provided by Mr. Knox and members of his team, and a desire to get some feedback from the community. And it will be held at the Chesley Community Center at 6 p.m.
Thank you for that. Minutes, Donna.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Ingalls and seconded by Councillor Eadie that the minutes of the following committees be approved. February 1st, 2018, Corporate Services Committee, Executive Committee, Homes Committee, Human Services Committee, Museum Committee, and Paramedic Services Committee. February 15th, 2018, Executive Committee, Planning and Development Committee, Transportation and Environmental Services Committee.
You've heard the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of adopting the minutes for those two meetings? That's carried. Thank you. And moving on to item 9 is the notice of motion. Any notice of motion this morning? Number 10 is other business. And number 11 is bylaws, Donna.
I have a motion moved by Councillor McKeever and seconded by Councillor Tulin that the following bylaws be adopted. 2018-013 is a bylaw to adopt estimates, tax ratios, and tax rates for the year 2018. 2018-014 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of a purchase of service agreement between the Corporation of the County of Bruce and Port Elgin Montessori Preschool Incorporated to provide childcare services. 2018-015 is a bylaw to govern the proceedings of the council and committees of the Corporation of the County of Bruce. 2018-016 is a bylaw to regulate and control the movement of all-terrain vehicles and multi-purpose off-highway utility and recreational vehicles on a portion of Bruce County Roads 8, 9, and 13. 2018-017 is a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement of purchase and sale for the purchase of lands described as 254 High Street, Southampton, Ontario, part public reserve block, north side of High Street or Little Lake, square plan Southampton as an SH 4320, Sauging Shores, PIN is 332540017. 2018-018 is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the County of Bruce at its meeting held the first day of March 2018.
You've heard the motion to adopt the bylaw. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed? And that's carried. And we have a motion for adjournment. Thank you, Donna.
I have a motion moved by Councillor Tulin and seconded by Councillor McKeever that we adjourn to meet again on Thursday, April the 5th, 2018 at 9:30 a.m.
Heard the motion. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion? That's carried. Thank you very much.